it's a safe bet those doors are locked.
Fortunately, I have a delicate lock-picking technique.
Ah, the Transformers masterpiece line. I think it would be fair to say that many people considered this to be the pinnacle of what Transformers toys could be. It was one of the first lines of toys made specifically for the older, high-end collector, with high amounts of detail, clever engineering, the best articulation, and a great amount of accessories. Nowadays, I think people's opinions of what the best line is far more varied, with the retail lines of Generations and Studios series showing massive strides in what retail figures can do, not to mention the unlicensed third-party scene making high-end figures in basically every size class. And now, with the line essentially ending and transforming into the Mpg line, I think now is a great time to make a video like this. I mean, that, and I've been meaning to do this since like February, but don't worry about that. Masterpiece has changed a lot over the past 20 years, best shown by the fact that the line produced 3 different versions of Optimus Prime: MP1, MP10, and MP44. Today we're going to look at all 3 of these guys, both to see how the line evolved, and also to answer a simple question. Of these 3 primes, which one should you get? Before we get started though, I need to make it clear that I'm only talking about Optimus Prime himself. I won't be talking about the trailers in any capacity. This is for one simple reason. The version of MP44 I have is the Toy Deco variant, which didn't come with the trailer. Some may take issue with this, but I don't think he looks that different from the original, so I don't think comparing him with the others is that big of a deal. For what it's worth, if I did bring the trailers into this, I would say MP44 is probably the best by virtue of it having the most, but neither of the other trailers are bad, barring the trailer for MP1 not having roller. With that all being said though, let's get into it. And we of course start with the first prime, MP1. According to TF Wiki, this guy was made with the specific purpose of producing an Optimus Prime that was as accurate as possible to the original animated series as they could get. And I've got to say, they didn't really do a good job of that. When you look at the cartoon Optimus design, it's a lot softer, with more curved edges and far simpler details. This guy is far blockier, with sharp edges and loaded with details and paint that the show design never had. That doesn't mean it looks bad though. MP1 reads more as an attempt to expand upon the original G1 toy, making it larger, increasing the level of detail, and something that'll be more obvious in robot mode but is still prevalent here, adding more gimmicks for playability. I love the piston details on the back of the cab. Doesn't really make much sense for them to be like this, but I don't really mind. They look really cool, and the silver paint used throughout the figure does a great job of bringing out extra details. And on the whole, the choice of red and blue paint is rather nice, although the color matching isn't perfect. In particular, the mechanical workings on the wheels really benefit from the extra paint. And speaking of the wheels, this is where those gimmicks come into play. See these screws here? Those are there because this guy has actual suspension in the wheels. Such a simple thing, but it makes this guy roll like an absolute dream. Helps that he has these incredibly thick tires. I love how big they are. They remind me of other thick things I like, such as... you know what, maybe I shouldn't finish that sentence. Sadly, while there's a lot here I like about this truck mode, it is far from perfect. The vehicle cohesion on the whole is pretty lacking. The legs are one thing, since even now Optimus truck modes just having the legs go through minimal transformation is pretty standard for the sake of the legs being stable. But the cab has some pretty noticeable gaps that don't feel like they were done for aesthetic purposes. The windows stick out further than the grille, which itself sticks out further than the headlights. There's no side view mirrors or doors of any kind. The joints for the shoulders are completely exposed. Also, these parts here don't actually plug into anything. They just sit there, which is pretty lame. There's a lot of jank here, but even so, this alt mode is pretty fun. It has a lot of nice details and paintwork the other two don't, and definitely feels the best to roll. It's also pretty heavy with all the die-cast metal in it, which in this mode specifically, please keep that in mind, this mode specifically, it feels quite nice. It may not be the best truck mode ever, but I still find it to be a pretty good one overall. But now we go to 8 years later, and to MP10. While MP1 was made with the apparent goal of being the most show-accurate Optimus Prime, With MP10, priorities seem to have shifted towards being more of a realistic display piece. As a result, this truck is far more cohesive than his predecessor, striking a balance between the G1 cartoon and the ultra-accurate vehicle styles of the Alternators line, but not going the whole way for the sake of the transformation and the robot mode. As much as I like the details MP1's truck mode had, they didn't really reflect what an actual Freightliner looks like, or in the case of the Pistons, as much as I like them, are really just details meant more for the robot mode. MP10's details, though, are much more closer to what an actual Freightliner used in the 70s and 80s would look like. Not to mention, this cab has none of the gapping issues the previous one did. Also, hey, he's got doors and side mirrors. That's nice. Now, for the most part, this figure does forego the gimmicks that MP1 has, but the truck mode does have a fun little feature. You can open up the windows, and inside we'll find a little seat. This is here for an included minifigure of Spike, but mine's in storage, so let's just use this guy instead. Simple to use, looks nice, it's a fun feature, pure and simple. Honestly, I'm finding it hard to come up with any real criticisms for this guy. The back section may do the same thing as MP1, but like I said before, I don't really have a problem with that, and MP10 actually does it better by compressing the legs far more. The color choice is nice, the red color matches better than previously, and the blues are nice too. Not really better per se, but still good. And of course he rolls just as well as MP1 did. There's no suspension sadly, but it's still fun to do. The tires are also less thick than before, which is disappointing, but I still like them. Kind of like... Look, I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals, okay? Shout out to my fellow healers, we are all struggling under the power of Iron Fist. And don't get me wrong, it's not just the women in this game, check out Venom. That is a nice ass. I'd like an ass like that. I should probably go to the gym more and work on that. What was I talking about? Oh, right, MP10. Overall, MP10's truck mode is fantastic. It takes everything that MP1 does and improves upon basically everything, and as a result comes out as the far superior version. And now we go from 2011 to 2019 with MP44, which honestly doesn't look that different from MP10. The differences between these two will become far more apparent when we get to robot mode, but for now MP44's front cab is basically doing what MP10's did, just with some slightly different sculpting and a different shade of red. There is one thing this guy can do that MP44 can't, and that's having the doors actually open. And opening them reveals what a certain YouTuber referred to as a medieval torture device. This is basically MP44's version of the minifigure compatibility MP10 had, but honestly it's nowhere near as good. For one, this area is so small that trying to fit a minifigure in here would be more trouble than it's worth, and the lack of clear plastic windows means that you can't even really appreciate it once it's in there. So yeah, cool that the doors open, but the actual gimmick is pretty underwhelming. Still, this cab section is pretty good, so let's see what they've done with the Oh my goodness! Squidward! So like I said before, most Optimuses just have the legs undergo minimal transformation for the sake of stability. Very rarely does an Optimus try to mimic what the back of an actual truck looks like. Not to say that there haven't been. The Leader Class Revenge of the Fallen Optimus pulled it off, as did the Studio Series Bumblebee Optimus. MP44 here is attempting to do the same, and holy crap does it do it poorly. I could maybe give a pass for the end with the trailer hitch, but then you see how the rest of it looks, and what is happening here? This is an absolute mess of parts that are only relevant in the robot mode. Also, that's the gas canisters just sitting out in the open. I don't mind faux parts like this. Sometimes parts that are used in both modes are in completely different shapes, so making a version specifically for that mode makes sense. In fact, all three of these primes do this with the front grille, having an alternate one used for the robot mode. But what is the point of having it when you can see the vehicle modes versions right next to it? While the front cab is good, MP44's back section, while having a slimmer profile, is an absolute mess of parts. It just doesn't work and ultimately results in this truck feeling like a downgrade from what MP10 had done. So with that being said, I suppose we have a clear favorite here. Of these three, MP10 has the best alt mode. You might think I'd put MP44 at the bottom given what I just said, but its cab section is still much more cohesive than MP1's, so he gets second place. Sadly, that leaves MP1 at the bottom. It doesn't anger me the way MP44 does, probably because of how much older it is, but even still, this alt mode just isn't as well put together as the others. Time for an alt mode size comparison. To the top of the cab, MP1 is 10 centimeters tall, MP10 is 8 centimeters, and MP44 is around 7.9 centimeters. Despite MP1 being significantly taller than the others, all of these guys will work with your other Masterpiece figures in vehicle mode. It helps that the Masterpiece figures are around the same size as Alternators figures are. But now it's time to get these guys transformed and into their robot modes. Despite the Masterpiece line being known as a line with transformations that are infamous in some circles for how complex they are, MP1's transformation is actually very simple. Starting with the feet, let's lift these parts up and then rotate the entire foot around. Then this part here is flipped down and you can bring the rest of it into place. From here we can separate the legs, bring down the trailer hitch, and then extend the legs. The legs are spring-loaded, and the gas canisters are actually buttons to activate them. They can be a bit finicky when trying to collapse them, but bringing them out isn't too bad. Now for the front cab, let's flip these parts, then open the windows, and fold all of these parts down. Now you're supposed to flip this part down to bring the head up, but my copy isn't in perfect shape, and this part tends to just detach whenever I try to do it. Just imagine me folding it out, then bringing it back up once the head's in position. Now we can take the arms out, untab the front bumper, fold it around, and bring it up just a bit so we can access the matrix chamber. For this part, I'm going to stand him up to make it a bit easier to see. Let's also flip the robot mode grill down while we're here. Flip the chamber to its side, collapse the grill, and bring it into place, but don't cover the matrix just yet. It should look something like this when you're done. Now flip the wheels around and bring them into the body. Try to push the matrix chamber up a bit for some more clearance. Once that's done, bring the whole upper body into place. Turn the waist all the way around, then collapse everything up. Finally, we have the hands, and these are actually quite unique all things considered. You flip this panel up, pull it out, then collapse it back in. I love this. It's such a cool and unique way to have the pans pop out that you never really see anymore. And that's MP1's transformation. It's a bit cumbersome to do, mostly due to just how heavy and big this guy is, but honestly, it's quite a simple and easy to understand transformation that you should have no problem going back and forth from. Now, MP10 isn't actually that different from MP1 as far as transformation goes. What MP10 does is simply make adjustments to what MP1 did, either adding or streamlining the steps. Starting with the feet again, all we have to do is fold the feet out, separate the legs, fold these panels into place, bring the gas canisters down, extend the shins out, and finally fold these panels into place. For the cab, we can start with bringing the smokestacks up. Fold the mirrors in, open the windows, then untab these sides and bring them down. From there, you can take the arms out, and in the process, we'll probably extend the biceps. For the fists, simply fold this panel down, bring the fists out, then bring all of the excess panels back into the forearm. Fold out the head, then bring the grill into the chest. And now let's bring him to his feet. Fold in these parts, then swivel the wheels around and bring them in. Bring the entire torso down into the grill. Please make sure to actually tab it in, I forgot to. Turn it around, and we're done. Like I said, MP10 mostly follows the same outline MP1 had, just with a few changes here and there. Overall, I like it, and honestly, I find it more enjoyable than MP1. Probably because MP10 is nowhere near as heavy as MP1, which just makes handling him a bit easier. Both are good, but I think this guy does it a bit better. Okay, here we are. This transformation is rather infamous for its complexity, and because of that, I'm going to be handling it a bit differently. I'm going to cover MP44's transformation in broad strokes, only showing certain steps as well as before and afters. I know that after having just seen MP1 and MP10 done in full that this may be a bit disappointing or just flat out annoying, but I only have so much time to make these videos, and trying to show this step by step would simply eat up too much of it. If this was a video just on MP44 itself, then no problem, but since I'm doing all three of these guys, this is the way I'm gonna do it. That, and if I'm being completely honest, this transformation is, well, Let's just say it would be a lot trickier to show you each step, something that becomes immediately apparent upon step 1. Yes, really, this is the first step. What you need to do is fold the side of the cab into itself, then fold it down so it sits flush on the wheels. Now we can untab the legs from each other and untab this part. Some more rotations to tab these parts together, then you can get the gas canister set up. From here, we'll extend the shins out and tab this part in to secure it. Rotate the trailer hitch around and bring the entire section up, shift this part up, and from here you can tab this entire section in and then tab this guy in. Then all that's left is sorting out the feet, and that's the legs done. Before we get to the cab though, let's just clean up the waist section so we won't have to do it later. Now let's do the arms first, since they're pretty simple. You're basically doing a similar version of what you did with MP10's arms, nothing too complicated. Now what we need to do here is untab the grill and compress it for the backpack. Untab the torso and bring it into its proper position. Now we can move the wheels into position to become the lower torso. We can also take the opportunity to get the matrix chamber ready. Make sure this tab is all the way down or it won't go into place. Before we can put them into place though, we need to pull the backpack out, then rotate this entire section around, bringing the head out in the process. Also fold this part down and bring these parts up. Twist the windows around and bring in the sides. Now we can finally put the matrix chamber into the chest and close it all up. Finally, we plug the backpack into place, bring everything down, and MP44 is fully transformed. This transformation leaves me rather conflicted. Doing this off camera, it isn't too bad, and a transformation being complex doesn't equal it being bad at all. But the way this guy just throws out everything the previous two figures did just for the new transformation to be far less satisfying and fiddly is just so confusing. Although, I do have a hypothesis for why they did this. See, the backpack is in fact a speaker. Yes, MP44 actually has a voice box, letting you listen to various voice clips from both Optimus's original Japanese voice actor Taisho Genda and original English voice actor Peter Cullen. That is a pretty cool feature, and it being part of the figure itself, it makes sense the transformation is as complex as it is to accommodate it, since it can't exactly transform itself. But why? When MP44 released, Masterpiece had well and found its identity as a display-based, collector-oriented line. Why in the world would you bother with this feature when a majority of people who buy this will essentially never use it? Not to mention that one of MP1's releases came with a display base that had voice clips built into it. Why not just do that again? While I don't find this transformation awful, I don't find it good either. All of the complexity and small microsteps this takes is just to accommodate a feature that will more than likely never be used, resulting in a transformation that fulfills its function, but also doesn't feel as fulfilling as it should be. This feels like it should be a lot simpler, and we've seen others like the Magic Square Light of Peace have a transformation that, while complex, doesn't come across as a mess. It is what it is, but what it feels like should be a lot better. By comparison, MP1 and MP10's transformations are a much simpler but still involved and fun process. Though ultimately I have to give it to MP10 as having the best transformation of the three. Like with the vehicle mode, it takes what MP1 did and simply improves upon it, resulting in what I would argue is a much better experience. But now that we've gotten these guys transformed, let's take a look at their robot modes and see how they stack up there, shall we? Just like before, MP1 is looking really nice in robot mode, though again, more as its own thing than as a screen-accurate version of the character. Once again, I've got to talk about the pistons. I love how they look, but what's really great is that they aren't just a static cosmetic. Yep, these are actually functional. Just be careful with the feet. The pistons here can actually pop out if you're not careful. Like I said before, MP1 has quite a few gimmicks in it. And since we're at the lower section, I should mention that the suspension in the legs wasn't just for the wheels. Push down on the figure and the shin vents pop up. A very simple thing, but quite fun regardless. But that's not all. The arms actually have communicators built into them. Each arm has a different picture on them, and each of MP1's various releases has different characters on each arm, so keep that in mind if you have a preference. Of course, there's the Matrix of Leadership, which looks just fine, but you can extend the Matrix out like Hot Rod does in the '86 movie. Alongside that, there's also a light-up feature in the Matrix chamber, activated by this switch. Sadly, my copy doesn't work anymore, but it is a cool feature nonetheless. This brings us to the head, which looks pretty nice, but if you look at the back of it, you'll find this hidden button, which when pressed lets you move the mouth plate. Not only that, but if for some reason you decide to pry the mouth plate off, you'll find Optimus actually has a sculpted-in mouth that references the original Marvel comics. Now, they did not have to do this as you would never see it, but I love the fact that they did. It really shows how much passion was put into this guy. Not to say the others didn't have passion put in, but you know what I mean. MP1 is filled with a lot of different gimmicks and features and flourishes that are a lot of fun, and give him quite a bit of charm that the other versions just don't have. It's just a shame that he really falls short when it comes to actually handling him in this mode. Let's start with accessories. Prime comes with the standard Energon axe and ion blaster, but he also gets Megatron in his gun mode, which is a nice little addition. Now, the axe works relatively well, can be a bit of a chore to get it in and out, but broadly speaking it works. I can't say the same for the guns though. MP1 doesn't have any tabs to plug them into to keep them in place. You're relying on friction and gravity to make sure they don't fall out of the hand, which isn't so bad for Megatron, but makes posing him with the ion blaster in hand really troublesome. But I'm burying the lead here because getting him into dynamic poses in itself is a struggle. Remember that weight I mentioned in truck mode? All of these guys have die-cast metal in their lower body. Specifically with MP10 and MP44, it's in the feet. This is both for a more premium feel and to give the figures a better center of gravity, allowing them to stand better. MP1 though tries to replicate the die-cast placement in the original G1 toy, so part of the chest is made of die-cast metal. But despite the G1 toy also having die-cast feet, MP1 has die-cast shins! Yes, the shins are die-cast metal, being supported by ball-jointed feet, and you can probably figure out the problem here. MP1 is simply so heavy that he struggles to stay in poses. It's not impossible, but it is precarious, and slight movements can easily cause him to topple over. You can even see in some shots that he's leaning forward due to just how much weight is being put on the feet. Honestly, it's such a shame because he does have a good range of articulation, pretty much what you'd expect of a modern retail release barring the shoulders and ankles, but the weight issues sadly make it so that he can't really do a whole lot. I suppose that is to be expected in some regard though. This is the first masterpiece, released 21 years ago. There are bound to be some growing pains. And if nothing else, where this guy stumbles, his successor makes strides. While MP1 ultimately had a more toyetic look, MP10 again leans into being a more realistic take on G1 Optimus Prime. It has some great mechanical detail all around thanks to how well the vehicle mode was done, but proportionately it is a bit off in my eyes. It comes down to the midsection of the body. It's a tad longer than it should be, resulting in the legs and arms feeling a bit disproportionate, although thankfully not enough where it really detracts from the figure's overall looks. I will say though, while the head looks great, the eyes would really benefit from being a brighter blue. Mind you, this is only the case on the Takara version that I have. The Hasbro release of this same toy has a much brighter blue for the eyes, so maybe take a look at that one if you're interested. Now, MP10 doesn't have any gimmicks like MP1, but he does still have the Matrix of Leadership. It looks a lot better than MP1's, but it doesn't do anything, so I'm just gonna leave it in the chamber. What does both look better and work better than MP1 though are the accessories. Like before, MP10 has the axe and the ion blaster. The axe works much better than MP1, being able to be put on and taken off with ease. The gun can actually be stored in Optimus's back and is spring-loaded, which is a nice touch. And unlike before, this ion blaster actually pegs into the hand securely, meaning that posing Optimus with it is no longer a hassle. And as you might expect, he is far, far more posable than MP1. Interestingly, MP10's range of movement technically isn't actually that much different from MP1's. It's really only the ankles that are noticeably better. But that, combined with only having diecast in the feet, is all MP10 needs to be able to get some nice poses off, running circles around his predecessor. Ultimately, what we're seeing here is basically what I've been saying all video. MP10 has taken what MP1 has done and improved upon it, resulting in a far better figure. As much as MP1 may apparently be going for screen accuracy, MP44 is the only one that truly accomplishes it. Ignoring the toy deco, this is the closest any of these guys have come to matching the original G1 show design. It's certainly the most well proportioned, and while it may not have the same mechanical flourishes as the others, the smooth toon aesthetic works well in its own right. The head sculpt, like the others, is absolutely great, but if for some reason you don't like it, you do get an alternate curved head based off the first season of the show. Can't say I like it though, it's a bit too rounded for my taste, so I'm just gonna leave it off and go back to the default. As for accessories, they're basically the same as MP10's. The Matrix works exactly as before, so I won't spend too much time on it, while the axe works via removing one of the hands and plugging it in. Not as good as MP10's to be honest, but it works well enough. Which is also the case for the Ion Blaster. It actually comes with an additional blast effect, which is great, but it doesn't seem to want to plug in as securely as MP10's. Its weapon storage also isn't as inspired, so it's good, but I like MP10's just a bit more. But where MP44 absolutely dominates is in articulation. Having double joints as well as an ab crunch and butterfly joints, if you're someone who wants to get your figures into big dynamic poses, MP44 is the way to go. He far and away exceeds what previous figures do, being able to get into pretty much any pose you can think of. For all of the issues I've had with the vehicle mode and transformation, you could argue it pays off gangbusters here, as this guy easily has the best robot mode of the three. Robot mode size comparison, MP1 sits at a whopping 29.5 centimeters, while MP10 is 23.5 centimeters and MP44 is 24.5 centimeters. The latter two will naturally fit in just fine with the existing Masterpiece figures, but MP1 is probably going to be displayed standalone, given just how big it is. Though, given it was released around the same time as Alternators, and its trailer was specifically made with Alternators in mind, maybe sticking him with them wouldn't be a bad idea. So that's every Optimus Prime released in the Masterpiece line. Well, every G1 Optimus Prime anyway, we can talk about the movie ones another time. All of them have their boons and banes, their positives and negatives, but as you may have noticed, there's only one of these guys who I've been consistently pleased with throughout the video. Overall, I would say that MP10 is the best of the three official Masterpiece Primes that we currently have. While MP44 may have the best robot mode, MP10's is hardly bad at all, and combined with its great vehicle mode and transformation, I think it's the clear winner. If you can only get one of these guys, this is the one I'd recommend. But honestly, all of them are worth giving a shot at least once if you can. They've all got something worth experiencing them for. Just please be financially responsible about it. As for the future of Masterpiece Transformers, I'm curious to see how well the Ginria/Power Master Optimus Prime releasing in MPG turns out, but that will have to be a story for another time. That's all I've got to say on these guys. What do you think? Do you already have one of these primes, and if so, which one? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where, spoilers, we'll be talking about how all three of these expensive, collector-grade figures were surpassed by a retail release. See you then!